Today we're going to talk about Earth's layers. So let's look at this image from a second. I want you to think of some questions that you can come up with from this image. Maybe jot them on a piece of paper, maybe jot them on the side of your notes. The biggest question I can come up with is, where does this hole take me? Why was it created? Okay, so think about this picture as we move forward and talk about the layers of the Earth. All right, so the layers of Earth are divided into a couple different types. The first type is the composition layers, okay? These are identified by their composition or their chemical composition technically. So right here, chemical composition, and that's the makeup of the actual layer. All right, so the crust has two types, and it is the outermost layer, okay? It's this part right here, and it's made up of continental, such as this, and then oceanic, such as this. Both parts contain oxygen, silicon, and aluminum, and the oceanic crust is going to be denser and contain more iron, calcium, and magnesium than continental crust, okay? Something to remember. They are the same in terms of they both have a base. Even though it has water on top, it still has surface or land underneath. The difference is the continental land is just going to be much thicker because it's all land, whereas the other is land with water on it. The second composition layer is known as the mantle. You can tell right here, it is much larger and thicker than the crust is. And the mantle is made up of hot, slow-flowing rock, and it has convection currents. We've talked about convection currents before. We know that the warm rock rises and the cool rock sinks, okay? And then this layer is also going to be more dense than the crust, and that will be important later on. Then the third layer is actually two parts, and it's the core. It's this part right here that's yellow, and it's mostly made up of iron and nickel, both parts, the outer core and the inner core. But in this classification, it's technically just one. So you have three chemical composition layers: crust, mantle, core. This is the densest layer when we're talking about the core, and it makes up approximately 1/3 of the Earth's mass. All right, the physical layers of the Earth are divided into physical properties, such as solid and liquid and how waves are transmitted. And the main physical layers are going to be the lithosphere and the asthenosphere. Okay, these are the two that we're talking about on this slide. Now, if you look, you'll see the word lithosphere right here. Notice that it is directly underneath the crust, because this is crust and this is crust. The lithosphere is a rigid layer divided into tectonic plates, and it's made up of the crust and the upper mantle. So the very bottom part of the crust and the very top part of the mantle is technically what we're seeing when we're talking about the lithosphere, okay? And the asthenosphere is the slowly flowing rock where the tectonic plates are going to move on top of this layer. So this one kind of oozes, and if you notice, this is where subduction is going to occur, which will be something that we talk about later. But this flowing layer is going to have the oozing. The other physical layers are the mesosphere, the outer core, and the inner core. Now the mesosphere is the lower part of the mantle, and the rock is going to flow slowly here. Meso means middle, so it's easy to remember that this one is always in the middle. The outer core and the inner core. Now, when we were talking about composition layers, we said there were three main ones: crust, mantle, core. But now when we're talking about physical layers, they are divided. And the outer core is liquid. That is very important. And it's going to surround the inner core. I tell students to think of it like a castle. When you have a castle, you often have a moat, and that's the water that surrounds it. The outer core is kind of like a moat, okay? And then the inner core, which is going to be solid, is going to be like the castle. Great way to remember it. And the inner core is about 6,380 kilometers beneath the surface that we walk on. So most important things, we're going to backflash and we're going to go back real quick. I want to make sure you know lithosphere is the layer that's the bottom of the crust here and the top of the mantle. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about the lithosphere. The asthenosphere is the oozing, slowing, plastic-like layer that is flowing. Then we have the mesosphere, which is the middle layer, and then you have the outer core, which is liquid, and the inner core, which is solid. Here we go. When you put them all together, these three over here are the composition layers, the crust, mantle, and core. And all of these are the physical. Okay, the lithosphere, asthenosphere, mesosphere, outer and inner core. This is a silly way to help you, but it's called Lamoi, and it puts them in order from outer to inner, L-A-M-O-I. If you add the extra C in the beginning, great way to spell them from the outside in is clam-oi. Great way to remember them. So I want you to take the time now to draw it. You just saw an image. I want you to sketch it out. So over here, we'll have the crust. Sorry about my writing. The mantle and the core. And these are the composition layers. Over here, we're going to have the physical, and we're going to have the lithosphere, the mesosphere, whoops, is this big piece, and in between those we're going to have to add, we're going to switch colors, and we're going to add the asthenosphere, okay, we're going to switch back to, well, actually we'll say purple. Then we're going to divide, and we're going to have the outer core and the inner core. All right, sorry about my horrible drawing. Hopefully yours is better, but there we have it. Composition is the 3 layers, physical is the 5.